It's Tom Morgan with Lucy Martens today, and I have rarely been so excited for a conversation as this one. I have this obsession that the role of elders, indigenous elders and wise elders, has been almost completely neglected from the Western media landscape. And if you don't believe me, just try and name the wisest elder in contemporary content that you can. And one of the amazing things about having started Leading Edge is that I've been introduced to remarkable people. And my sister introduced me to Lucy recently. Lucy's projects as a filmmaker have been about finding and amplifying the voices of Indigenous elders, which I think is not only fascinating, but incredibly urgent. And I wanted to talk to her today about her current project and what we as a community can do to help. So with that, Lucy Martens, please introduce yourself, and thank you so much for giving us your time.
Thank you so much, Tom. Yes, so I'm Lucy Martens, and as Tom just already said, I'm a filmmaker for the last 20 years, been working in documentaries, but very much the last 7 years focusing on Indigenous voices. And I pretty much slipped into it. I was working on a project in the Middle East, and then a friend asked me, what's the next film you would like to work on? And I said, I would just love to work with Indigenous people. And that night I bumped into an old friend who was telling me about a group of people who were looking for 12 Indigenous elders to bring them to the UN in New York, and were looking for a filmmaker. And I'm like, oh gosh, I will be totally up for that. And yeah, that's how I then got onto the project The 12, which was the film I filmed and co-directed with the Ciel Foundation 6 years ago. And for a year filming and yeah, just meeting 12 Indigenous elders from every corner of the world was so life transformating that since then I've been very much focusing on to amplify the voices of elders and those who speak the voice of nature, which are essentially Indigenous people today. So that's how I got into it. And yeah, it's really much has changed my worldview. And I think with that, I've also found a niche that has kind of moved me away from like a kind of a documentary filmmaker looking at a lot of different topics. It's really been like looking at Indigenous wisdom, not only from the perspective of elders, but like also looking at regeneration, or how do we connect to nature? How do we connect to the cosmos? And really going to kind of holistic and more interconnected way of living and being.
God, that's fantastic. And you're currently working on the project EarthElders. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the EarthElders is a council of now 13 elders from around the world, and next year to be 52 elders from all over the world who are going to be representing 52 bioregions. And in 2013, there were 100 elders from around the world who gathered in the Sierra Nevada in Colombia to look at the state of the planet, because they were really feeling that, that the earth is not well. So after having multiple ceremonies, they had realized that we are in the time of the eagle and the condor, which is about unification, and that if we continue being on this one path, we are going to destroy the earth and essentially then also humanity. So that also meant that it was a time for elders to start speaking out and to spread their wisdom, because that's really what's needed right now. And I know that you work a lot with Ian McGilchrist and the whole thing about bringing balance between the left and the right brain. And this is very much what the prophecy is about. How can we bring in balance again, and a more holistic way of living and being, and not just about growth and intellect and pushing and taking, but how can we go back into a circular way of being? And a word that Indigenous use a lot, which I think is so important, is the concept of reciprocity. So how can we, whatever we take from nature, how can we give back? Whatever we take from someone, how can we give back? So really go more into circular ways of being instead of linear. And that you can obviously apply with all facets of life. Like, how do we look at time? How do we work? How do we look at health, education? So it's really about working together now. So it's not about going back to, being in the bush or in the cave or in the jungle, but how can we use this primordial wisdom that Indigenous people still hold, or at least those still hold who have still unbroken lineages and have been working with their own elders or have been the indigeneity, how can that be bridged with people from the more modern world who really want to work with Indigenous together? So they say it's all about, those people have the same heart vibration. Those are the ones who need to come together now. So it's not really about skin color or your wealth or your education. It's like, where's your heart? And work together on, moving forward.
Talking about heart, the moment I read about the eagle and the condor prophecy, I was like, blimey, oh my God, this is just another framing of the same dynamic that I've been reading and learning about for the last 10 years. Could you just give a quick primer as to what it says and where we are?
So the eagle and the condor is just a totem form of explaining the separation that humanity has been in. So that's a Mesopotamian interpretation of the prophecy. But when you speak to people in Africa or like in Australia or in Northern Europe, they would have different totem animals. So in Africa, it would be the lion and the elephant, for example, who are just representing different energies. And it kind of shows that humanity at some point went into separation. So 500 years ago, for example, with the colonialization of indigenous people in South America, it was that, like very literally the North came and dominated the South and dominated indigenous people, and saw their ways of living and seeing was an inferior way. So everything was suppressed, like nature or intuition or the feminine, and very much this kind of like northern, or let's say like modern mindset has been dominating the world. But in the prophecy, so they saw that this was going to happen 500 years ago, and now 500 years later, they call it Pachacuti. It's like a new time that is starting. So from 2013 up into 2026, there is a cleansing process that's going on. So there's a new energy that's coming onto the planet, because the planet or the earth is also moving through the cosmos and is also a living being that is also going through its own evolution. And because we are, if you believe that we are part of nature and part of this planet, we are also going through an evolution. And this is something that you can't stop, because it's just a different energy that is now, that is coming onto this earth. And that's why there's so much kind of shifts happening in this period. So they believe before the new era can begin in 2026, or the new dawn, how they call it, a lot of things have to break away first. And that is, that's everything. But it's obviously the governments and everything that's not aligned anymore with nature or the universal laws. But everything that's happening externally is also happening internally. One could say that a lot of people are also questioning certain lifestyles and questioning themselves and questioning maybe there are different ways of being, or is this really like the way I want to live, or am I really happy, or is this really a purposeful way of living and being? And that is because there is a new energy coming in. So I don't know, I personally have been feeling or seeing a lot of people waking up, and but they also say it is a living prophecy. So it's not going to happen because it's going to happen. It will only happen if there are enough people who wake up. And that is also being pushed by the earth, who is a living being, and she's going for this evolution. So indigenous people say, it's not about climate change. It really is about a lack of harmony. So the earth is just kind of like shaking and showing us that she's not happy. And through that is also a process of pushing people to wake up. What is happening with the climate, for example. So if that's true, there are really beautiful times coming ahead. But before that, there needs to be a lot of cleaning up first.
Almost everyone listening to this will have a deep sense of resonance with that and agree. And so let's get down to it. How can we help you? What do you need?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, thank you for asking. And I think Indigenous projects in general need to be funded. There is like slowly coming more into people's consciousness that the way or the knowledge that they have is important, but it's happening too slow, especially with the EarthElders who received in the ceremonies that I was talking about. They received 5 earth mandates. which they need to fulfill over the next years. And one of them is building a council, which they've already achieved from going from 7 till 13. And next year they want to be 52. So that needs funding in order just to, bring these elders together. And another mandate is to build houses of original thought in these 52 bioregions. So those are basically educational centers to reconnect to the indigenous and ancestral wisdom of the land in each area. That we're not only focusing on Western education, but that we're also focusing on the plant medicine, or like how can we actually learn from the mountain or river, and like really go back into a much more holistic way of learning. So they want to build these centers, and that they're all centered around a fire, which they believe that everything, starts with a fire and the conversations, and that you start teaching the children and the grown-ups about learning from nature again. So that's one of their missions. Then they work on protecting natural sacred sites, which they've also been already working on, and they need to continue to work on, which they have also identified different places. Like in 3 weeks, we're actually going to Mount Fuji with 2 of the elders, and also to go filming, because for them, sacred sites are like the energetic points of the earth. So if you believe that the earth is like a body, like the human body is, we also have certain energy points like chakras, for example. And if they're blocked or if they're not respected, then you become sick. And that's the same with these sacred sites around the world, that they have been misused and neglected or been blocked, like through either tourism or mining, because there's always a lot of biodiversity around these sites, or there's no ceremonies anymore, no rituals. So part of their mission is to go and protect these natural sacred sites and to do a ceremony, but also create learning centers around, so you learn about the importance of them, and then essentially actually guard them to protect them. So there would be like Mount Shasta, for example, in the US, or Uluru in Australia, just to give some examples. Then the Earth Elders are also buying land back in order to protect it from nature and to rewild it, and also to put it under the guardianship of the elders who are responsible for that bioregion, to just give it time to restore itself. And so it's protected from mining and deforestation, etc. And then another mandate of theirs is to go to places like the UN at COP to actually speak the voice of Mother Earth and to be able to be part of the policy change. So for years already, indigenous people have been going to the UN and to places like COP or any kind of climate conference to really bring in another perspective of looking at climate change and why it's so important to bring in the voices of indigenous people. So the Earth Elders are also doing that. And then, we're working on a film to bring out their messages, to really amplify their voices, and to really help to create policy change.
The last 20 years of my career around tens upon tens of billions of capital, and capital that increasingly has a conscience. And looking through your work and listening to your words, I just hear a word, which is leverage, which is that this strikes me as incredibly high impact, high leverage project, where you're getting the awareness through the documentary, and then you're actually on the ground through leverage points themselves in terms of the elders. So I'm hopeful that this message will reach people, given that there's so much potential good to be done with the amount of captive assets looking for quote unquote impact within particularly family offices. So I do hope that finds them. For people that were participating in this, what do you think their individual involvement could be in any of the projects?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I'm also speaking for the elders, so I need to also circle back and check. But I think, as I was saying, the prophecy or the way, especially this council is working, it's all about collaboration and reciprocity from both sides. So, so how can, if someone wants to give contacts or funding or anything, how can they give back? And a lot of it is obviously knowledge exchange, or could be, meeting some of the elders, or being part of building these educational centers, which I think, would be a beautiful project to be part of. Or having the name on the film. I mean, it really is also a personal thing for each one, like what does actually matters, what matters to them, and what is their concept of reciprocity. So I think that's something to explore.
I have to ask a question. All the way through reading all this stuff, I was like, how did you find the elders and how did they find each other?
So with the Earth Elders, so Mindahi Bastida, who was he's basically the convener of the Eagle and the Condor Council, and he is from Mexico. So he attended these ceremonies in the Sierra Nevada in 2013. So he has been working with his own teachers and guides, and through a specific kind of selection or guiding process, they've been finding and selecting these elders from around the world. So it is not only like, you know, reading someone's CV, it is also going into ceremony and checking with spirit. So that's how they also, put the council together. And I think what's also interesting, sorry.
No, please go.
No, just no one that what I find interesting about this council is that each of the elder really does represent also, or knows how to walk in both worlds. So they're all like, you know, deeply cosmic and connected to their lineages, but also have like PhDs or like, you know, live in a city or have been to like the COPs. So they really know how to walk and talk in both worlds. And that again is kind of like, you know, the eagle and the condor prophecy, like being able to balance both energies. That makes sense.
This is weirder rabbit holes I've gone down, but I think for us in the West, we regard shamanism as a guy wearing furs and beating a drum and a relic of magical thinking. But there's a chap called Peter Kingsley, who's this kind of mystic and classicist who is by far the most interesting person I've read really since McGilchrist. And one of his central themes, to my mind, is that basically one of the greatest unspoken taboos in Western civilization is that actually there's a mystical heart that was seeded by a shaman. Actually, he thinks a shaman from Mongolia, and then was like steadily repressed because one, would have to take responsibility for ourselves, but also it kind of violates most of our materialistic assumptions. And my reading of Kingsley is that he believes that Carl Jung was himself kind of a shamanic prophet, but Jung realized very early on that if he started telling people what he'd seen, they wouldn't believe him, and that actually he needed to dress everything up in the language of science. And what I've seen so far is that this kind of eagle and condor is manifesting at the moment in terms of people trying to reconcile a scientific worldview with the mysticism. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. Indeed, probably the most interesting thing I've read on this topic over the last few years has been the conclusion of Richard Tarnas's Epilogue of the Western Mind, which I think I shared with you. Epilogue of the Passion of the Western Mind, where basically he's like, this departure from the feminine was supposed to give us a stronger masculine grounding so that when we came back to the feminine, we could do it from a place of more equal union. When I read about the Pachacuti and I read about this prophecy, like it really struck me that this was actually a really optimistic vision. Again, it's a participatory vision. Like we can still screw this up, but it was a very optimistic vision. Whereas I feel like a lot of our institutions kind of decay, like we're kind of overcome with this negativity, and actually participation in this project was something that was inherently optimistic. And that was a very new vision for me.
Yeah. The optimism is so important right now, I think, because we can't just be about doom and gloom. And if you don't have optimism, you don't really have any energy or power. So I think something I've really learned from being around elders is that they are just so much fun, that they are, you know, see like everything that they've been through, you know, like the colonialization and like the land grabbing and everything, but they're just like still so kind. And when they come together, it's just like actually so much fun. And I think that's what I enjoy most of being around Indigenous elders, is that they just know how to be. I think, you know, it just being like so fully authentic and not having to prove anything, and just being, very centered in their kind of ways of being, and just enjoying the moments. And even though they can see obviously everything that's happening around and seeing a lot of destruction, but there's just a deep, deep trust. And I think because they just have such a different connection to the earth and the cosmos and to their lineages and the way they see death and life, or the way they see, yeah, I guess the future or the past is a very different way than we see things, because we're just so obsessively holding on to and stuff can also be memories, or stuff can also be things that we want for the future. So they know the only thing that they can do is walk step by step in the best way possible, and that's how you create the future. And not, not hold on to any expectations, because all you can do is do the best that you can do now, and do it with the right intentions and the right integrity and the right values and the right protocols. And then, take people on board while you walk along. And I can see, or say from experience, that over the last years, I can really, when you have an elder in a room, that people do gravitate to them just by like sensing some kind of energy that they have, and they might not know why. But I think it's just this feeling of someone who just stands really straight and doesn't need to say anything, or doesn't need to comment, or doesn't need to prove anything. And they just are. And there's just so much to learn from that, and just living in trust, and living, really doing one step at a time, and giving thanks to nature and thanks to life, and just being a bit more present in this world. So that already is a good place to start, I think. And if we're not optimistic, what's the point?
It's funny you said that. I just recently interviewed her. She describes herself as a teacher of presence, and I was sitting with her, and I'm the least present person ever. And I was like, oh, I think this is what we're playing for. I think this is the point, which is the ability to be totally present in the moment with your loved ones, or with, whatever is most important at that moment, and be able to give your attention to that. And I feel that when you think reciprocity, and you think what these people can give you, maybe that, right? Maybe the ability to just be totally authentic and totally centered, no matter what's going on around us. And maybe, I mean, it seems like you definitely learned that from them, and maybe that's something we can take from this as well.
Yeah, I mean, I still struggle a lot. I know I did learn a lot. And I actually, yeah, I mean, I also grew up in Germany and in Hamburg, and I was very, very suspicious. And when I, was saying earlier, when I went on this trip on the 12, and I was struggling so much that whole year, because I was always in the back of my head, like, oh my God, no, you can't talk about spirit. This is ridiculous. Or like, you can't. And I was just, I can't show this in a film. This would be like so embarrassing. And, the more and more you are around people like that, the more you start crumbling and surrendering. And I can only say from my own journey that I have learned, so much, and just being in the presence. And I can only say that's a huge gift.
In the 12, you had this remarkable Gabonese man, who I felt was like the star of the show. I really strongly recommend everyone watches the 12. And what was interesting is not only was he kind of hilarious and like fun, as your point, but also everything he was saying was remarkably consistent with the stuff I've been learning from sort of these weirder esoteric sources like Christian mysticism. And like, maybe he's just reading the same things, but for me, it struck me that what was really interesting is when you get wildly diverse indigenous groups who've never had any contact with each other together. They're all basically saying the same thing. And as someone who's, an ex-finance guy, it's all pattern recognition. And like, there's the value, right? You see all these people, and like, if they're all saying the same thing, that probably means something. It's probably not a coincidence. And if you get 52 of them together and they're all saying the same thing, that probably means something too, right? I don't know. Has there been a lot of consistency in the message that you're hearing from these people?
Yeah, for sure, 100%. And I think actually, the Gabonese guy says it in the film too, that indigenous wisdom it's the primordial wisdom that was born before time, that has always been there. And it's just something that has been, kept in the lineages and been passed down, and that you can still tap into as well when you reach a point where you can start communicating with nature, or where you just, drop into nature and you get messages back, which is just very, very deep, and always, I wouldn't say simple messages, but actually quite clear messages of like how to yeah, how to be with nature and how to just like, questioning, well, what's beyond the sky? What goes beyond, what is this cosmos that we're floating in? Just like asking questions. And once you start asking questions, like things may come to you either in books or like the people you meet. And it's just about opening up to like this very kind of linear and like tunnel vision that we've kind of developed. And yeah, it is really, really amazing to see. I was in March, I was filming with another Indigenous container called the Earthrise Collective, which was born in South Africa, and it was over 50 elders as well who came together to to kind of exchange knowledge, to sit together and see like, what kind of activism can they live, what kind of alternative solutions are there out there based on Indigenous knowledge systems. And even though they all have like different rituals or different songs or different costumes, the essential wisdom or the way they see the world is the same. The values are the same. There might be different protocols in different traditions, but it is about community. It's about reciprocity. It's about we are nature. It's about being in joy, being in the presence, and really seeing that we as family are one humanity, and we are here to actually protect and guard the earth and not to take. And that's, I think, been like the most, well, destructive knowledge really that has also come with monotheistic religions, that we are here to take from nature, and that is detrimental, obviously, to us and the planet. So, yeah.
So you speak so beautifully, and I feel incredibly grateful that we were connected. Thank my sister. Before we leave, where can we find more about you? Any last words for us? How can we help? I know you've already said what you need. Anything we need to know?
Well, I don't know if you would like to share our teaser of the EarthElders that we made from their first gathering, which is like an 8-minute teaser when the council met with the 13 the first time last year in Chile. Also, the 12 is out there online. It's always been out there for free because we believed it's not our film. This is the film of the elders. So the film was always accessible to watch online, and it's beautiful to see how it's like, yeah, just slowly spreading, and that more and more people are waking up to the importance of this knowledge. And then we obviously have a website and a film treatment and all kinds of documents. So happy to share all of that.
Right. Yeah. And if you are interested in this, please contact me or Lucy, and we can try and bring some good into the world. Lucy Martens, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good morning. This is Tom Morgan from The Leading Edge, and today I am joined by perhaps the most exciting guests I've ever had. I'm joined by Mindahi Bastida, who is the founder and convener of the Council of EarthElders, and I am so grateful that he would come and explain what's going on with both the EarthElders and the prophecy of the eagle and the condor with us today. So Mindahi, welcome. If you wouldn't mind, please tell us a little bit about your background and how you've ended up in this position. Thank you.
Ati, hey, Pefi. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mindahi Bastida. I'm from Central Mexico and from the Otomi-Toltec peoples. And I was raised in this beautiful valley that is called now the Toluca Valley. It's next to Mexico City, but this Toluca Valley is an upper valley, and in ancestral times, it was called Zambata. Zambata is the meaning of the Valley of the Moon. And it's very important because we live in cycles, and we live with the cycles of celestial bodies. So we consider the moon as a grandmother, and the sun as a father. So meaning that this earth also got family. And as we call Mother Earth, we are the children of Mother Earth. So my background is from my father lineage, especially from my grandmother and also my grandfather. They were dancers, Otomi-Toltec Mexica dancers. It's how they met. And in following the tradition, they also bring the power of that lineage of the thunderbolt. So we have very special place because here in central Mexico there is a volcanic belt that is called New Volcanic Belt, and most of the lineages from the thunderbolt, they are born here. The Saudinos, as they are called, the graniceros, meaning the hailers, or the tiemperos, the timekeepers, but not just the timekeepers in a sense of what we are, but in a sense of that they speak, they work in collaboration with the clouds, with the weather, and phenomena. So I want to call the attention that, for example, today in Otomi-Toltec tradition, also very related to the Mayan calendar, because it was based in the Olmec ancestral times. So today is the start of the original Mayan year, for example, and it's the 13th movement, and it's very powerful because, as you know, the 13 is the 13th cycle of the moon, and that's the reason the Valley of the Moon is very important, because we have 13 appearances during the year of the moon, and it's so meaningful because we need to bear in mind that when we put the seeds, when we cut a tree with permission, or when we cut the grasses, or when we take the palms to build houses or to do anything, we observe the movements of the moon. So that's the reason I'm very honored to be born in this valley. And today is very special because it's the start of this Mayan calendar, and it means that also the unification process, where the Eagle peoples are coming together with the Condor peoples, and as in ancestral times. So in my tradition, also from my mother's side, she was born in another state in between Hidalgo and Querétaro state, central North Mexico, north of Mexico City. And she's from the bird lineage, meaning that also they honor all the birds, but there are special birds like the hummingbird, or like the eagle, the condor, and other special birds that they bring the energy that we need for our lives, for the life to be in balance, for the life to have enough energy. For example, every day when the sunrise is about to come, before the birds are already working, already carrying out ceremony. And it's very beautiful because they are bringing that energy, so the sun comes up and we have a beautiful day. That happens as well at the sunset. They give thanks. They give thanks for the day, and they call and they acknowledge the entities and the beings of the night. So that's very powerful. And other birds wake up. Other birds are, like during the night. And So we have all those contacts with the natural world, but also it's very auspicious because if we live in the cycles of life, not fast, not that slow, but in harmony, then we can have a beautiful life. So that's the touch that we have as Otomi-Toltec peoples to live with this world, with nature, to live in harmony, to live in peace. But peace doesn't mean not to do anything. Peace means to do everything so it brings harmony, it brings balance. Because when you don't do your work, then peace is broken. That's how we think about peace. Peace is action, is to take action, is to take responsibilities. So that's a little bit of my background. I was raised in a very beautiful way because I have had so many mentors, especially my grandfathers, my grandmothers, but also other mentors that have guided me. And that's why in 1968, I began to carry out ceremonies in the Otomi Ceremonial Center. And we began to learn with the elders. And let me tell you that elders are not just elderly people. Elders are those who really hold the wisdom. And that wisdom is not just ancestral, it's modern and contemporary wisdom because we interact in the world. So that's a little bit of my background.
Thank you. And then how did this Council of Earth Elders come about? What was its origin and what is your role within it?
Well, ever since before, we were receiving the messages of how the world was becoming very unbalanced. It was in 1992 when I learned that the world was not doing very well. And even before, in the 70s, I saw with my own eyes how the river was dying here, dying in the sense of in the material world. The Lerma River is the longest river in Mexico. And we have some lands. We have a community-based land. It's called Ejido. And we used to swim in those waters. But then the industries arrived, and Mexico City was taking our waters to supply the growing Mexico City. And it was very tragic. It was an ecocide because the waters were polluted, the fish died, and it was very, very tragic. And with that, all my childhood, and I was thinking about the future. I was thinking about my peoples. We were not going to be able to swim anymore. And we had the wetlands, very beautiful wetlands. They were dying, and the wetlands were drying because of the waters being taken away through the Sistema Lerma. The system is that they conduit the waters from the aquifer, but also the surface. They were so polluted, and still they are so polluted. So I learned that, and I was talking with my elders, and they said, life is changing. And they were very sad when the Ciénegas, the wetlands were drying up. Many women began to die. Many women began to cry very deeply because we have an entity here, the mother of the waters. We call the Atlanchane, the mermaid, La Sirena. And in this case, this sirena, this mermaid, is not with fish tail, is serpent tail. And it's a beautiful entity. Because of colonization and because of that, we were not able to carry out ceremonies. It was until the 90s, 1994, that we began to think about that. And 1996, because everything was chaos, then we began to carry out ceremony in public for the first time. The only way that we could carry out ceremonies was in the sweat lodge, in the Temazcal, because then we were not accused of doing something like witchery or something like that. But now we are coming back. We are coming back. And thanks to these prayers, we were able to bring back the waters. But we are still struggling. As I said, in 1992, I was present in the Earth Summit in the Rio 92, the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development. At that time, there were signed 3 covenants, 3 conveniums. But sadly, because all the governments were worried and the industries and corporations and, states and peoples and organizations, they began to get worried about the state of the world, how much we were losing biodiversity, species, we were losing lands, desertification was growing already, but also climate change. Climate change was already an issue. The sky was being dumped with so much gases, CO2 and others. So we felt, and we already felt that not just Mother Earth was crying, but Father Sky was crying, and they are still crying. There is so much greed, so much misbehavior, how we are treating our mother, how we are treating our father. So this is a long story of how human beings have been gone away from the original instructions. And this is about the call of Mother Earth. Then we received this call from the peoples of La Sierra Nevada. We have had already many gatherings. For example, in the Otomi-Toltec Center in 1991, we had already been called by CONIC, the Confederation of the so-called at that time indigenous or Indian peoples of the continent, under the call of the eagle and the condor. Because there's this beautiful prophecy that we are going to talk a little bit later. But let me tell you that it was the first time that I met people from the north and the south. We were gathering, we were worrying about how we could come back again. And there was this beautiful initiative of the Jornadas, the Journeys of Peace and Dignity, to bring people from the north and the south in our ancestral city of Teotihuacan, Dangujiadi. Teotihuacan is a massive city, ancestral city in central Mexico. It's Otomi-Toltec city. Of course, the book says that we don't know where they left, but it was just when the Mexicans arrived, it was already depopulated. There was nobody around, like living in the city, but around there were, and still there are communities of the Otomi descendants. Anyway, What I am saying is that in 90, it was until the year 2013, and in between, from 1991, we had so many gatherings as the journeys of peace and dignity. People were coming from and still we are doing this, running with the staffs from Alaska to Mexico, and from the Tierra del Fuego in the south of Argentina and Chile, coming together from all directions. It was the first meaningful spiritual and material effort for the peoples to communicate once again. And then in 2013, we were called by peoples of La Sierra. There are four, well, especially the Kogi, the Arhuaco, and then the Wiwa and Cancuamo. We gathered in Tezumaque. Tezumaque is a community of the Arhuaco peoples. Maybe you know about the Kogi more than Arhuaco, but the Arhuaco also are very present there, and they had to leave around the Caribbean Sea and the Pacific and the valleys to hide themselves from the colonizers, and they kept their traditions, they kept their ways, and until today they are struggling and fighting for the land back, and also strengthening their culture and taking care about the Black Line now to protect the Sierra Nevada and the sacred sites. So while we were there in Tezumaque, I remember it was at the beginning of the year, we gathered and we produced this declaration. There was a material declaration that we can provide to you, but there is a spiritual also commitment. And it's where we received, at that time, the 4 pillars, the 4 mandates. And then later on, we received the 5th one. So we, as the Earth Elders, we received, through my person and others were around, these beautiful mandates. So that's how they were born.
Interesting. So, what is the prophecy of the eagle and the condor, and what does that relate to in terms of?
Well, there are many interpretations of the eagle and the condor prophecy, because every people, every community, at least in the Americas, we have, in the most beautiful ways, we have kept somehow this prophecy. Of course, not all the peoples we have it, but the peoples that we have kept this prophecy alive is at least in the Amazon, in the Andes, in Central America and North America, many peoples. So we knew about that because I was in the Otomi Ceremonial Center, and I was asking the elders, there is a symbol like this. You know, this union is like this, that symbol. And I was wondering, what does it mean? It's in a big mural that depicts the jaguar that we call Damishi. Then that jaguar is very powerful because it's an animal that represents the power of the peoples. It's like the eagle, the vision, and the jaguar represents the night and in between, and the eagle represents the sky. The same with the serpent, and that's the reason we have these entities represented in the Otomi Ceremonial Center, and there is 3 rocks underneath, and it's called Gospi. And Gospi is the hearth where you put, you ignite the fire. So these other 3 points opening, one goes to the west, the others one to the north and one to the east. So they are open to the east, and the east is where Father Son comes. Is the fire. So the other elements is the water, the wind, and the earth. So you can see how all of this configuration, all of this is in a sacred way. So on top of this, there was this symbol. I was asking, what does it mean? It means the peoples from the north and the south. And that was it. But later on, I learned that they were also in touch with people from the east and the west in very ancestral times. So this prophecy is unfolding, revealing itself. So there are many interpretations, but I'm going to give to you the most, let's say, the most basic, and the most basic, it doesn't mean it's not complex, but the most basic way of understanding how in our cosmovision we relate to each other. So people from the north and the south were put apart. In the last age, it was 500 years ago when the colonization occurred in the Americas. But it also occurred before in Africa, in Asia, and elsewhere. And the root is about how humans have gone away from the original structures. That's the meaning. And how the peoples were put apart because under the position or the imposition of the nation colonial states and later on the nation states, they were not able to communicate anymore. And many peoples were destroyed, were undermined. Many peoples disappeared because they were destroyed in many ways. And some peoples, they had to go to the mountains or to the very intricate places to hide themselves, or they became in corregimientos, in pueblos, in communities, in reservations, the so-called reservations in the North America, because people before were living in different ways. Some of they were kind of nomads, like the Chichimeca or Apaches or Mescaleros and many others. Most of the peoples were in that way. But because they had to be governed in other ways, in a Western way, they put them together. And how they were disseminated, not just because they were slaughtered when they didn't want to obey or to be converted into Christianization, but also because of the smallpox and other pandemias. Let's say pandemias at that time, it was very horrible. And because people were here, didn't have enough strength to resist other viruses that were alien to this continent. So that happened in every continent. But in the Americas, it was like that. And the prophecy of the eagle and the condor then goes in this way. People from the north and south are going to come together Because one day, as Cuauhtémoc said, our sun has gone. Our sun has gone, and our peoples, our territories are going to be in darkness. It's going to be a long night, but there is going to be one day that our sun is going to come back, and our sun is going to bright once again. And the peoples from the north and the south are going to come together, and the consciousness is going to be elevated. And the time is coming. So that is also written. But now, some people say that has to do with the mind and the heart. Of course, has to do with that, but not only with that. And some people even put technology and science and with the wisdom as the counterpart. Of course, it has to do with that, but it's not just like that. Let's go deeper. Because there is heart and mind in the north, and there is heart and mind in the south. Meaning that there is south in the north, and there is north in the south. So what it means is that it's a call for the unification process. For the beginning, is to acknowledge the spiritual authority of original nations and peoples. Because this spirituality shows us that we are the keepers, the practitioners of the ancestral wisdom, how to live in reverence, in responsibility with nature. So the prophecy of the eagle and the condor is quite important, because this prophecy tells us how we can behave and how we can honor life. And it's not just from the from the me to the we, but it's from the we to the responsibility to act. So we are aware of that. People from the north that represents the eagle. Mexico is one of those because it's in North America. Even in our flag, we have that vision. And one day I saw this beautiful flag, the seal of the National University of Mexico, one of the oldest universities in the world. Because, of course, there is Oxford and other ones, like in the Western way. But when it was acknowledged, the UNAM, it was in the Western way, but with ancestral seals. If you see the flag of the UNAM, because it was based in the Calpulis, in the ancestral universities of the Aztec. If you see the flag, the seal of the UNAM, you are going to see the eagle and the condor, and Latin America. But on top, of course, is North America. It was, the Aztec, the Mexica, all the Apache, the Mescalero, the Zuni, the Ute, all of them until the Innu, we were in touch. We were in contact. There was so much communication. So what it means is that it's a call now, not just from among the original peoples and nations, but from the original peoples and nations to the Western world for unification. So the prophecy of the eagle and the condor is not just for us, it's for humanity. And we are learning now, when we were in Africa, in South Africa, that they also have this prophecy rebellic. And it's so fantastic, so wonderful, because they are seeing in the ancestral cities the symbols of unification. And they are embracing this prophecy. They are embracing this prophecy because there's north everywhere and there is south everywhere. The global south and the global north is a concept that we can direct into this direction of unification process. We need each other. If we want to make it, we need each other. Meaning that, of course, original nations and peoples, we can guide others to remember who we are as humans. But we also need to understand how the modern world and the Western world operates. But it's not going to save us that way. The technology is not going to save us. We have to be very clear. We have to meet our responsibilities, just to be humans. One species, just one species in the concept of life. Because we can see how far we are from the original instructions. And it's simple, but at the same time, it's a lot of responsibility. And you know very well that 80% of biodiversity is in our territories, is on our lands. But let's not take it for granted. Let's not just, oh yes, because they don't like to work, they don't like to modernize, they don't like to advance, original peoples and nations, they don't like to progress or to develop. It's not that we don't like. It's because we respect life. And we want to carry out this good living. Why do you want development if you are dirty in the waters or the soils or the air? What kind of good living is that? Maybe it's good life for a certain point, but the good living is a responsibility. The good life is just to take and take and take over instead of taking care. And the good life is just the greedy way of being, more individualistic, with no collective responsibilities, and just to have a lot. But if you have to give back. One of the original instructions to give back is the concept of reciprocity. If you're just taking and taking and taking, that's a sickness. And that sickness is a mental and a spiritual sickness. Let's just name it like that. But you can support life. If your person, if your corporation, if your industry, if your state, if your government, your organization is not taking care of life or giving care of life, then you must change. You have the chance before it's too late. For some, it's too late. We have so many problems, systemic problems in the world, that is late. We are losing possibilities of beauty. We are losing possibilities of doing and acting and feeling it in the right place. So this is about the prophecy. We have this transition time. And let me tell you about the transition time. You know, we operate in cycles. We don't think the time is linear. Of course, we can understand the linear time for business and for everything, even for a meeting. But time is not linear. Time is cyclical. So that's why our ancestors developed this notion of the ancestral calendars, how to live in harmony with the cycles of life. So in May 3rd, 2013, ended the big cycles of the Mayan calendar. For some, it was in 2012, and there were even movies that it was at the end of the world and so on and so forth. It was not like that. It was just the end of the cycle, May 3rd. Even it was not in 2012. It was in May 3rd, 2013. And then we have 13 years until May 3rd, 2026. Because in the cosmovision, we have 4 sacred trees, and every big at the end of every big cycle, one of them falls, rest. But we and other species, we have to support and carry a ceremony to bring back the strength of this other pillar. Because there is 4, and at the center there's one spiritual one that connects the underworld with the sky. So these 4 sustains or dimension, let's say, sustains this world, but more spiritually. So we have to carry out this ceremony, and we have 13 years of remembering, reconnecting, of cleansing, or let's say, rethinking our place in the world. How we have acted in the past, let's say 500 or 5,200 years, how we have acted, and then how we can begin, how we can encounter the new dawn. Because the eagle and the condor prophecy has to do with the prophecy of the new dawn. It matches. And the prophecy of the new dawn is that we are going to begin another cycle of time, and we have the chance to survive and flourish again as humanity. Because the problem is that in the modern society, in the Western society, in the rational way of thinking, this positivist way of thinking, we think that we are the peak of the creation. We are the most intelligent beings in this world. We are intelligent, yes, but we are not the only ones. There is intelligence everywhere. It's just that we don't have the capacity to acknowledge. But are we intelligent really? We are not so intelligent. Look at around you. How we are. What kind of cities we have. What kind of families we have. What kind of communities. So, in many places, it's very sad what is happening. And we are getting the warnings. We are giving the warnings with the floods, with the fire. Now the 4 elements are speaking, are telling us. And this time it's not going to be the human agency that is going to give the lessons. Is this planet, is Mother Earth, that of course is a very intelligent being. Just imagine this, the intelligence of this planet is beyond our intelligence. And as you know, this planet can survive without us, but we cannot. Even though some people are trying to go to other planets, for what? To destroy them, to take over once again? And let me tell you something that we have been talking among the elders. In certain way, yeah, we have the capacity of wandering. But basically, it's a betrayal. It's a betrayal of this planet. It's a betrayal for Mother Earth. Because we don't even know we don't even know how all the species, we don't even interact with love. We don't give care. And then we have to go and destroy other planets? What is going on? We need to rethink our place in the world. We need to be more humble and then turn out that we need to relearn. As my daughter says, we need to re-earth our minds, our spirits, our bodies. Because we were born here, and we were born here in this dimension, in this planet for a purpose. And we think the purpose of human beings is to give care and take care of life, not to take over. You see? The eagle and the condor prophecy and the new dawn give us the perfect opportunity for the unification process, to acknowledge the ancestral wisdom. And science has to be under that. Science is to serve. If it's going to serve for the care of life, because there is science that is killing life. There is technology that is killing us little by little. And there is technology that is enslaving people. It's enslaving minds instead of freeing ourselves. So let's watch out. Let's be aware what is coming and what is happening already. So we have this beautiful opportunity to listen and to act in such a way that we can do it together. We don't have any other option. And we can even say that things are going to happen and are happening, but there are places where the energy is kept. So there is kind of this protection, these bubble protections in some bioregions, some ecosystems, because ceremonies have been carried out. The work is being carried out in such a way that we can survive in that way. But many are going to suffer. Many of us we are going to suffer if we don't have just to listen, if we don't act. So this is the time to act. This is the time to recover your family, to recover your community. And family is not just human beings. And family is not just blood lineage. Family is all who you are. Because we are the reflection of the four sacred. We are the reflection of the mountains, of the sea. We are the reflection of the trees where we are growing up. And if you move, you also have to come and ask permission to be there. And there is a reason why you are living where you are living. And for that, you need to honor your ancestors. And the ancestors is not just the past. The ancestors is the future. And the most beautiful thing is that we live in between. That's the mystery of life. So this is about the Earth Elders calling back, calling all human beings to really understand that we are here just for a while, not forever. But we need to take care of the seeds and give love and deliver good seeds to this planet.
So I've spent 20 years in finance, on the City of London and then Wall Street. It's arguably the power center of the world, but it's also one of the centers of that kind of disembodied intelligence and skepticism. And you alluded to it when you said, you know, in 2012, there were movies made about the Mayan prophecy and the end of the world. And we had the 2000 Y2K panic. And this prophecy is talking about 2026 as a turning point. And I worry that this will fall on deaf ears for those that need to hear it the most. What would you say to that kind of person who wields power and influence, who hears what you're saying and completely discounts it?
This is time. This is a time for you to really think your place in the world. Because if you are given special gifts, talents, they are not just talents and gifts, they are responsibilities. If you were given that brilliant mind to make money, but in the way that just take and take and take, you know what is like the water that they don't move on the surface, they get stink. So that's why we are encountering so much pain, unhappiness. If you want to liberate, let it go. If you have taken more than you need, you have to give it back. Especially those who have taken the lands and the territories or are digging up and are mining, not just the planet, but the mind. You know, come back home, and you can do something very, very special if you can, to come back to harmony, to come back to balance. This is a beautiful opportunity. Maybe it's going to be too late at certain aspects, but we can still do it. We can still mend the hoop. We can still be and regain collective dignity. If you want to transcend, if you want to really do something, you are not alone. We need to act together. We can come together. So we learn and we do together. We feel together. We act together. It's very difficult because the human way of doing it sometimes is just my way. This time it's not going to just to be my way. We have to learn and listen. So, as we say, people wake up because Mother Earth is waking up, and faster than we think. So we still have time, a little time to do it. And it's before 2026 that we can set up things in the right path. We still have time. But after then, things are going to be, for some, very rough. For some are going to be even more beautiful, even happier, because we are going to be free of so many things. Things are coming, are already happening. So this is the time. So change and be in collective mode from the me to the we, because it's the only way we can survive.
If someone, on the other hand, is listening to this and it's landing and they have the resources and they want to make that kind of impact, Let's talk a little bit about the 5 mandates. How can people listening help with that in a direct level?
The 5 Earth mandates that we received at the beginning in 2013, I'm going to mention, we have so much to say, but just in summary, the 5 Earth mandates, the first one is the acknowledgement of the spiritual authority of original nations and peoples, meaning that we need to listen to the elders, to the Earth elders, because we're the ones who have kept this wisdom, how to live, how to be, how to feel, and how to act in such a way that this planet, this Mother Earth, is honored. So for that, we are building the councils, the Council of the Eagle and the Condor, the Council of 13, and the Council of 52, the Grand Council. All of us were named for the public, the Earth Elders. So if you can support this initiative, is wonderful. We are already doing it. We need your support. We need your help so we can give guidance. And the second one is the protection, activation, or reactivation of sacred sites. As you know, sacred sites are very important because those are the places where the energy is born, so life can flourish. They are major sacred sites, they are regional sacred sites, they are local sacred sites. And now we are directed to more major sacred sites in the first phase, the second phase to the more continental, and the third phase is more to the regional and local sacred sites. Many sacred sites are in danger. We are working in 2 directions. One is to create an international regime to protect sacred sites. And we were working with UNESCO, but sometimes because UNESCO is related to nation states and they have to carry out so many diligences and so on, it's so difficult. And plus, this is the anthropocentric way of thinking that humans have to acknowledge the sacred sites. It's the other way around. The sacred sites have to acknowledge us in that way. And we know that they are sacred sites because that's the deep connection that we have. And we need to take care and give care and carry out ceremony. So for that, we need to travel all around the world, carrying out those ceremonies, giving spiritual payments and spiritual offerings, so we can protect them. In protecting them, we are protecting ourselves. And this is the work, not just for us. This is the work for this planet and for all human beings, for all species. So that's the importance of this work. We have already almost finishing the second phase. And before 2026, we have to finish at least one other visits to other continental sites. We are working very hard, but we are also lacking resources. And sometimes, in the first phase, we was not public. In the second phase, we are now sending some messages. There's going to be even maybe a movie production, some certain kind of documentary. But in the third one, we want to that people that understands, people that really wants to that sacred touch, but with responsibility, they can also participate, not in a massive way, but in a very conscious way. So that's the second mandate. The third mandate is about the building and the establishment of the houses of original thought. These spiritual houses are very important because many people lost the touch with the elders and the young generations and the elders with other cultures. So these houses where the fire at the center is the main authority. And I want to tell you something. When you have special gatherings and the fire is present, it's more powerful. Just to put an example, when you go to a restaurant and you see a candle, and it's very sadly that now they are putting like this kind of electric candles that are not the same because they don't produce the energy that we need. But when you go, for example, for a dinner, it's so beautiful when you go for a meeting and the fire is present. It's more powerful. Just imagine these houses of original thought with a fire lit. And we are talking about very important issues, how we are doing with the world, how we are doing with our lives. The fire is the master that guides us and guide us in such a way that we can do the right things. So these houses are meant to be built in the different bioregions, different territories of original nations and peoples for the beginning. And we are aiming 52 in the subrealms, in the bioregions of the world. For the beginning, we are advancing. We have already like 5 of those, but we need support to build this in different places around the world. And then ultimately we need to be available to build those houses everywhere, because we need that touch everywhere. And that's how some Western societies can come back, can remember through the guidance of the elders and the guidance of the fire, can remember the ancestors and how to be in sacred touch again with this planet and the celestial bodies. So that's the third one. And the fourth one is very important as well because it's about intercultural dialogue, intercultural exchange. And not just among original nations and peoples, but with the Western societies. We need to be present at the decision-taking processes tables. We need to be present at the UN meetings, UN gatherings, like the Conference of the Parties of Climate Change, Conference of the Parties of the Convention of Biological Diversity, even in Davos, in the World Economic Forum. We need to be present as Earth Elders. So the voices of Mother Earth are listened and are put in those public policies, or even private policies. The corporation needs to hear, they need to direct their ways of extraction. So you see, this exchange is to remember and listen, and to listen the Earth Elders how to act. So we are in that position. We have been participating in many, many gatherings, but we still are lacking places in the decision-taking processes at the national, regional, and international levels. So the fifth mandate, which is one of the most crucial ones, is the land back, is the earth jurisprudence, is the rights of nature. Remember, it was in 1992 when the environmental and the so-called now sustainable development emerged. And many ministries were born at that time, because before there was not even a ministry for the environment. A ministry for the environment began in 1992 and onwards. And some places there, they have even now the sustainable development or the sustainable ministry, sustainability ministry, like in Canada and other places. But we have been advancing because of the good living paradigm and the rights of nature, because the environmental law has been very permissive. It's just to facilitate the so-called development, the destruction, and the taking over of nature. And if you just fill up, the requirements, and here you have the permission to mine in an open mining. But you see how the world is suffering, not just this planet, but the peoples and the species. Anyway, I have said that before, but just to recall. So this earth jurisprudence and the rights of nature, let me tell you something about that. The rights of nature came to acknowledge the rivers, the mountains as subject of rights. And it's very important because corporations had already that personhood. Why not a river? Why not a mountain? Why not the seas? So you see how the great notion of this thinking is killing us, because it's based in anthropocentric thought. So we need to go from the anthropocentric to the ecocentric and cosmocentric, and that expansion of mind. So that's why we are calling back, and we are fighting for the land back. It's not for us to own, but to protect, to give care, to give love to the ecosystems. Because as I told you before, 80% of biodiversity still exists in this world, thanks to the capacity and responsibility of original nations and peoples, how we interact with nature. Because nature is sacred. Of course, we need to survive, but we need to learn how to, to interact with the natural world, with the spirit. Anyway, this fifth Earth mandate came after, because the defense of life is the defense of also the human species. We need to come back and to go back home. And in doing that, we need new rules based in ancestral wisdom, how we can behave. And we can acknowledge, because what I want to say before is the rights of nature is still anthropocentric, because who we are to give personhood to a river if the river has its own inherent rights. The river was before us, but the sea was before us. So that's the reason we are talking about earth jurisprudence. But we can facilitate that as human beings. So it's okay. Rights of nature is a step forwards, but later on we need to go beyond that and think how we can do in such a way that we are more humble, and to write the laws, the jurisprudence that acknowledge this planet as higher intelligence than human beings. Otherwise, it's going to be so difficult, and we are facing already all our misbehaviors. So you have the big chance to support this earth mandate. And it's not just ours, it's for everyone. But we can do it together. If you want, if you desire to reconnect with sacred responsibilities in this life, for you, for your family, for your community, for this beautiful world, so we can witness once again the beauty and the good living as human species.
I can think of no finer place to stop our conversation. I would just like to put an emphasis point that I've encountered a lot of projects over my life and career, and this seems to be unique in a couple of regards. One, that there is a message that needs to be amplified that appears to be urgent, you know, the next 2 years. So for those that are listening that have the ability to amplify messages and to access the people that matter, this is an opportunity. But also in terms of those with resources that are looking to make an impact. A lot of impact in philanthropy does not reach the places it's supposed to, whereas coming back to 52 critical regions via the means of wisdom, through the indigenous elders themselves, strikes me as a pretty amazing reconciliation of that persistent problem. So it's a very exciting project, but it's also a very urgent one, and you've articulated that beautifully, Mindahi. Any final words for our listeners? But firstly, thank you from me.
I just want to give you thank you for this opportunity to deliver our messages, and the call is to really to act now, because this is a beautiful time and space that we are sharing, and there is always a reason why we are here in this world, and the reason for us is to interact, to collaborate, and that collaboration should have very beautiful meaning for the flourishing of life, for the transcendence of your being, always thinking that we are not alone. We are never alone. So thank you once again for this beautiful opportunity, and we wait for your response, for your capacity, for your love, and for your being in this world. Okay, Kamadi, thank you so much.
Mindahi Bastida, thank you.